सिद्धिं प्राप्तो यथा ब्रह्म तथाप्नोति निबोध मे समासेनैव कौन्तेय निष्ठा ज्ञानस्य या परा. Shloka number 50 of chapter 18. Siddhim praptaha. Attainment of Siddhi. Siddhi is a very multidimensional word. Siddhi stands for perfection. Siddhi stands for completeness. Siddhi stands for Naishkarmyam. Naishkarmya is a state of actionlessness or reactionlessness. Siddhi is a meditative state. Siddhi is a prerequisite for Atmanubhava. That's why Krishna says, Siddhim prapto yata brahma tatapnoti nibodhame. Nibodhame, learn from me, Arjuna. Samasenaiva, he says in summary, in brief. Samasenaiva kaunteya, hey kaunteya, learn from me in brief. Samasenaiva means in brief, in summary. Let me summarize, because we have seen that 18th chapter is a summary of all summaries, and Krishna takes every opportunity to put together several profound principles dealt in detail throughout the Gita, and by summarizing them, he also clarifies many doubts at the same time. Now, this is the beauty of 18th chapter. He kinds of connects all the dots, and in that process, by presenting the big picture to us, he also clarifies all the doubts that we have as we journey through the Gita. So therefore he says, Arjuna, Samasenaiva, in summary, Nibodhame, learn from me. What to learn? Siddhim praptaha yata brahma tatapnoti nibodhame. He says, attainment, how to attain that siddhi, that state of completeness, by attaining which one experiences one's own true nature, Atmanubhava. The Atmanubhava that one experiences, one reaches that state of completeness. Let me explain to you in brief so that you get total clarity in terms of the importance of being engaged in doing actions. That's why he concludes the shloka by says, Nishta jnanasya yapara. The same state here, Arjuna, can also be reached by a jnana nishta. That state of meditation, the meditative state, the state of completion, can also be reached. It is also a supreme consummation of jnana. However, it can also be reached by continuing to do actions. Because often we think only by giving up actions, we can experience peace. The more we engage in actions, the more we are engaged with the world, the more disturbed we are. And therefore we quickly conclude that in order to experience peace, we must disengage from the world. Because as long as we are engaged with the world, somehow we seem to be disturbed all the time. So when we are engaged in any activity, it becomes very difficult to reach a state, a meditative state. We normally equate a meditative state with no activity. Even when we do dhyana, meditation, in our altars, we are almost in a posture which is actionless. We try to bring the activity down, focus, concentrate, and in that process experience peace. But Krishna is very clear. Hey Arjuna, yes, the path of jnana. Jnana is definitely the supreme consummation of jnana, is a state of completeness, no doubt. But for majority of people, engaging with the world is the only option. We have choiceless. For majority of us, not engaging with the world is not a choice. So Krishna, therefore, we see throughout the Gita repeatedly brings Arjuna back to his recommendation that, hey Arjuna, fight you must. Duty is foremost. You cannot abandon your duty. You must engage in activity. The beauty here is, this shloka is the 50th shloka of the 18th chapter. 18th chapter is the summary of all summaries. Similarly, the second chapter is also a summary. No, if you see the structure of the Gita, Krishna in the second chapter summarizes what he is going to teach. In second chapter, he brings together the principles of karma and jnana and atma sakshatkara. So, 6 chapters of the Gita are summarized in the second chapter. So, second chapter is also in a way a summary which summarizes the principles of karma, jnana and the goal of atma sakshatkara. 18th chapter, which is a summary of all summaries, summarizes the principles of karma, jnana, bhakti, atma sakshatkara and paramatma sakshatkara. And incidentally, the 50th shloka in the second chapter and the 50th shloka in the 18th chapter are also related. Buddhi yukto jahati ube sukrata dushkrute tasmat yogaya yujjasva yoga karmasu kaushalam. If we have to choose one gem out of 700 gems, this is one gem that we can choose, because this is a gem that we can live with day in and day out. The 50th shloka of the second chapter. Buddhi yukto jahatiha ubhe sukrita dushkrute tasmat yogaya yujjasva yoga karmasu kaushalam. Yoga karmasu kaushalam, a formula for successful living. Yoga karmasu kaushalam. There also Krishna basically talks about how engaging in activity is the only option. He says, we need to stay engaged with the world, because whether we like it or not, we are designed. Our body is designed. We cannot fight against several forces. If we keep always fighting, we will end up losing. So we will have to use the body and the design of the body, which is designed to engage with the world. And in the process of engaging in the world, how can we reach that state of completeness, the state of purnatva? No, this is the beauty of Gita, because Gita teaches us not to walk away from the world, teaches us how to stay within the world and live a successful life. And by living in this world, we find a way to exit the world. So therefore, in the 50th shloka of the second chapter as well, Krishna says, Karma Yoga is foundational. One needs to stay engaged with the world. When we do activities in the world, obviously, the outcome is twofold in nature. The Karma Yogi understands that the outcome is twofold. There is an outer result, which we all easily understand. But more importantly, there is an inner result, which we fail to recognize. Krishna highlights that it is the inner result which is more important than the outer result. When we ask, does result matter? The answer is a resounding yes. Many times we wrongly interpret Gita. People make several statements without even knowing what Krishna says. Results do not matter. Don't even think of results. No, Krishna never ever makes such a recommendation. Results matter. But what matters is the inner result and not the outer result. What is the inner result? Inner result is completeness, purnatva. This is what we are all longing for. That sense of completeness, the sense of no lack. A karma yogi understands that it is not about the outer result, because we can keep increasing our outer possessions but still stay very unhappy. At the same time, without many outer possessions, we can always remain happy. So happiness is not about what we have, it is about who we are. So buddhi yuktaha, he says. Yukta is a beautiful word. Yukta can mean even, fit, which is all. Yukta can also mean connected and joined. When we were doing the second chapter, we only look at the partial meaning of yukta. Buddhi yuktaha, even-minded. Even-minded, a mind which is tranquil. Buddhi yuktaha jahad, when the mind is tranquil. And even-mindedness helps us to transcend ubhe sukruta dushkrute, good results and bad results. What Krishna essentially is saying is, when we do our actions and based on the principle of karma yoga, we are situated in the knowledge of our spiritual identity and purpose. That every action that we do, if the action is done rooted in the awareness of our spiritual identity, rooted in the awareness of who I am, then that such an action will help us face dualities of life. It is as simple as that. As long as I do actions with misidentification, as long as I do actions with the wrong awareness that I am the body, my actions will not help me to face the dualities of life, because dualities is the very nature of life. Life is subject to dualities. Now, if I need to face the dualities of life, I need to be rooted in the awareness of my true identity, that I am more than my body. We need to be body conscious, no doubt, because if we are not body conscious, then we cannot use the body. But we cannot be only body conscious. We need to always keep telling ourselves that I am not just the body, I am more than my body. That awareness that I am more than my body, that awareness that I am the Atman, that spiritual identity, rooted in that awareness, whenever I do an action, yogaha karmasu kaushalam, Krishna beautifully says that is skillful action, he says. Any action becomes skillful, becomes expertful. I become an expert in doing any actions when I do that action rooted in the awareness of my spiritual identity, rooted in the awareness of the purpose of the action. Now, what is the purpose of the action? The purpose is twofold. One is an outer result, because every action has to have an outer consequence. There is a material result. But what is important is the inner growth. The inner growth is about becoming more and more satisfied, staying content, becoming more and more peaceful, becoming more and more complete, which means the lack of anything. We need to rise above the need to possess. And the only way we can do that, inner growth, is when we take out of the equation the world out of the equation. Because whatever action that we do, that action is infused with love, no doubt. But that love is for the world. That love is for the worldly objects. As long as there is love for the world, then we are always in a state of insecurity, in a state of frustration. Because the world, the people in the world, and the worldly objects are subject to change. Now, if our action, if our purpose is focused on the world, love for the world, love for the worldly people, love for the worldly objects, we will never be secure. We can never have satisfaction. Our satisfaction is always going to be momentary. So we will always be in a state of insecurity. Now, if we take the world out of this equation and we bring in the world maker into the equation, love of Krishna, when every action is infused with love of Krishna, love for him, that gives us permanent security. That gives us eternal satisfaction. So when Krishna says buddhi yuktaha, buddhi yukta, yukta we said is even mind, yukta also is mean joined, connected. Buddhi yuktaha, when buddhi is connected with Krishna, when No, we need to do every action taking the shelter of our intelligence, no doubt. But the action will be a lot more effective but when we use the intelligence to take shelter of Krishna. Let me repeat this statement again. We must definitely take shelter of our intelligence whenever we do any action. But the action to be really skillful, we must use that intelligence to take shelter of Krishna. Then we can call our buddhi is yuktaha, buddhi yuktaha. Then we can face the dualities of life without getting disturbed. Then we transcend the dualities of life. Why? Because now we are yoked to that which is eternal, that which is permanent. The ups and downs of life are not going to impact us because we are connected to something which is unshakable. That is why Krishna here calls us Siddhim, Siddhi, that Purnatva. We start to experience that completeness. We are only complete when we recognize that He is with us. That connectivity with Him, when we recognize that Purnatva comes in the knowledge of our true nature. Siddhim praptaha yata brahma tatapnoti nibodame. No. When we are complete, Krishna says, what is the outcome? Outcome is Atmanubhava, experiencing our own Atman. No, this may seem very abstract. Atmanubhava, self-realization, very big words. Atma Sakshatkara, even bigger word. While they are all very interesting and profound words and phrases, how is that we can, in practical ways, how can we relate to Atmanubhava? How can we relate to Atma Sakshatkara? We always, in our day-to-day life, we talk about being authentic. Now, what is true authenticity? Being true to oneself. We all know that we have to be true to oneself. Now, unfortunately, when we say we have to be authentic, we have to be true to oneself, we think that being true to ourselves means basically living the way our feelings dictate. Now, when we look at our feelings, or we can say feelings, aspirations, desires, put them all in one bucket. The problem is, we always live the way our superficial feelings dictate. Being authentic is not living by how the superficial feelings dictate. We have to look at the whole stack of our feelings. Dig deeper. It's like peeling the layers of an onion. Peel the layers until we go down to the deep driving aspiration of ours. Unfortunately, the deep driving aspiration that each of us have, somewhere hidden deep inside, and there are multiple layers of our other feelings which are superficial, which dictate our lives. So therefore, being true to ourselves is not just getting carried away by our superficial feelings. It is examining the source of our feelings, digging deeper and asking the question, what is my deep driving aspiration? And all of us, deep down, we all aspire to live meaningfully. We all have that aspiration. We all want a meaning to our life. Who doesn't want a meaning to our life? We all want our life to be filled with a meaning, and we are searching for that meaning, but we will only search for it when we start peeling the layers. Otherwise, our authenticity is nothing but leading the life of our superficial feelings. So therefore, when we say Atmanubhava, Atma Sakshatkara, all the big words, essentially is to be rooted in self-awareness. Now, when we talk about self-awareness, awareness of our true nature, we need to understand how important it is. It is more important than even self-discipline. Because we all know that desires drag us, keep dragging us all the time. We all realize the power of our desires. And therefore, if we have to summarize and say, a cause of many of my problems is my desires, if that's the statement that we make, immediately the solution we write, what is the solution? Is discipline. We need to be self-disciplined. Now, self-discipline no doubt is a solution, but self-discipline fails without self-awareness. This is why we always fail in disciplining ourselves. If self-discipline is without self-awareness, whatever actions that we take to discipline ourselves will fail, because to say no to our desires is like saying no to ourselves, and we don't like saying no to ourselves. Because as long as we equate our desires with ourselves, I am my thought, I am my desire. If I am my desire, how can I say no to myself? So saying no is very, 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 very difficult. Therefore, disciplining ourselves is a formidable task. It requires tremendous willpower to discipline ourselves. The moment we start becoming aware of ourselves, when self-awareness starts to blossom, we start to recognize that I and my desire are not the same. I have desires, but I am not my desire. I have thoughts, but I am not my thoughts. I am different. My thoughts are different. My feelings are different. My desires are different. I am beyond my thoughts. I am not my thought. I and the thought are two different things. I and the desire are two different things. When I start becoming aware of my true nature, I also get to see that I can direct my desires. I can organize my desires. I can shape my desires. When I start doing that, in that self-awareness, when I am rooted in that self-awareness, saying no to desire becomes a lot more easier. Disciplining comes effortlessly when I operate rooted in my self-awareness. So therefore, when we say Atma Sakshatkara, realizing my nature, the Atman, Atmanubhava, experiencing my nature, is when I do actions with the awareness that I can direct my desire. I can shape my desire. I am not at the mercy of my desire. Since I and my desire are two different things, I can make a choice. I can choose one over the other. Just because one desire is loud, I am not compelled to listen to it. I can shut myself and put the loudest desire down and try to listen to my deepest desire. We need to make the distinction between the loudest desire and the deepest desire. Unfortunately, the deepest desires are never loud. They're very silent. They're very dormant. The loudest desires are very shallow. They are at the level of the body. So therefore, Purnatva, the sense of Siddhi that Krishna is talking about, Siddhim Praptaha Yatha Brahma, that Atmanubhava that we can experience, which is attaining the state of completeness, enables us to engage in activities and at the same time engage in activities that become liberating in nature. That is Nishkama Karma. Nishkama Karma is where we keep doing actions, but we are in a state of no reactions. That is Naishkarmya. No, we keep discussing the state of Naishkarmya. Naishkarmya Siddhi, reactionlessness, which means we continue to do actions, but we do not accrue reactions. The problem is accrual. No, we accrue. We keep accruing reactions, and the only way to stop accruing the reactions is when we act rooted in the awareness of our own true nature. So therefore, Krishna in the 50th shloka clearly now sets the stage for the next segment of the Gita, where he's saying, hey Arjuna, listen, a summary. He says, I'm going to give you a summary of how you can attain that state, and through that state experience your own true nature. And then he starts off from shloka 51 onwards, he starts off teaching us how can we lead our lives in order to attain that state of Siddhi, state of completeness. Buddhya vishuddhaya yuktaha. Buddhya vishuddhaya yuktaha. Vishuddha buddhi. Vishuddha buddhi means purified intelligence. At the same time, vishuddha buddhi also can mean, a purified intelligence means what? Our buddhi becomes so very transparent that we are able to see ourselves, that is being aware of who we are. When the buddhi is not vishuddha, it is not, when we do not, essentially all sadhana is shuddhikara. Buddhi is being purified. The more buddhi gets purified, the more transparent it becomes, the clearer the vision of who we are. So, buddhya vishuddhaya yuktaha dhrityatmanam niyamyacha. Dhrityatmanam niyamyacha. Dhrityatmana, dhriti, with steadfastness, master yourself. Krishna is talking about restricted freedom. When he says, dhrityatmanam niyamyacha, regulate yourself, control yourself, master yourself. No. Restricted freedom is like an oxymoron. Freedom and restriction, how can they go together? Restriction is restriction, freedom is freedom. That is why he says, buddhya yuktaha. Now, what kind of intelligence is Krishna is talking about here? What is that intelligence? We must know that in our life and living, definitely there are limits. There are limits which restricts, there are limits which protect. And intelligence is know the difference. There are limits which restrict, and there are limits which protect. Intelligence is to know the difference between. Let me give an example. There is a heavy wind with dust which comes, and then there is this little child who is standing there, and then the mother rushes and embraces the child. Now the mother's embrace in a way is a restriction, but that mother's embrace there is not just a restriction. That restriction, that limit is actually not restriction, it is protection. Some limits restrict, some limits protect. Intelligence is to know the difference. Let me give another example. A person is in a jail. The walls of the jail limit him. He has no freedom. Now, the same person is in a fort, and there are walls around him which also restrict him. But then, outside the fort, there are people ready to attack and kill him anytime, the moment he comes out. When he is in the prison, he has no freedom. When he is in the fort, he has no freedom. But these two restrictions, these two limitations are so very different. In the first case, it is, he is in a jail, that freedom is restriction. He is in a fort, that freedom is also being restricted, but that restriction is protection. So, our freedom has to be restrictive freedom, because we need to know that there are things which we need to restrict. There are things which we don't need to. That is why Krishna says, Shabda, he says, Shabdadin Vishayam Styaktva. Shabdadin Vishayam Styaktva. How do we give up? Tyaktva, give up Shabdadin, all the attachment sense objects. We are living in this world. How can we not engage with all the Vishaya, everything around. Vishaya means all the worldly objects. Shabdadin Vishayam Tyaktva, giving up all the Ragadveshav Yudasya, he says. Ragadveshav Yudasya, Yudasya, which means essentially he is saying Raga and Dvesha both have to be sacrificed, have to be abandoned, have to be given up, have to be thrown. What essentially Krishna is talking about here? He's saying we have to continue living in this world, which means we are constantly engaged with the worldly objects. We cannot run away, but at the same time, we also need to be always watchful. Earlier in the second chapter, Krishna talked about the process of downfall, the process of our downfall in samsara. This process of the Atman's downfall in samsara is so very important to remember all the time. Vishaya pravesha, Vishaya dhyana, Vishaya sangha, Vishaya kama, Vishaya krodha, sammoha, jnana nasha, buddhi nasha. No, if we need to graphically draw this downfall, the downfall, jnana nasha, buddhi nasha, sarva nasha eventually, which is samsara. This process of downfall starts right at the beginning, which is Vishaya pravesha. Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsaha Sangasteshu Pajayate Sangat Sanjat Sangayate Kama Kamat Krodho Vijayate Krodat Bhavati Sammoha Sammohat Smriti Vibramaha Smriti Bramso Buddhinashaha Buddhinashat Pranashyati, he says. If you look at this, everything starts at Pravesha. Vishaya is a beautiful word in Sanskrit. Why we call it Vishaya, the sense object? Ideally, it should be, everything is a Padartha. Any material object is a Padartha. A Padartha becomes a Vishaya when we get attached to it. Vishinoti Badhnati Vishayaha. That which binds us becomes Vishaya. So therefore, everything in this world is only a Padartha. Krishna does not say no to experiencing the world. He says experience the world. Our eyes, whether we like it or not, will see the world. Our ears, whether we like it or not, will bring stimuli into us. So therefore, when we are engaged with the world, we cannot put a blindfold and work. We cannot shut our stimuli out there is going to come, going to bombard us. It is up to us how we process the stimuli that bombards us. So therefore, if we treat everything as a Padartha, experience it, but don't get attached to it. A worldly object, as long as it remains a Padartha, is okay. The moment the Padartha becomes a Vishaya, that's when the problem starts. Vishaya means immediately we stop getting attached to it. So, the moment that attachment to Vishaya happens, that's when the dhyana happens. Everything that we are attached to, we are always meditating, right? Because I always keep saying this. We think we cannot meditate, but we can easily meditate because we are constantly meditating, whether we like it or not. Instead of meditating on Krishna, we are meditating on the world, but we are meditating. Most often, we are in a state of meditation. It's just that the object of meditation needs to be different. So, Vishaya Dhyana is very natural to us, and it is because of Vishaya Dhyana the downfall happens completely. So here Krishna once again is reminding us as to how to stop the downfall. Somewhere we need to stop the downfall. The greater we go down and down and down, it becomes difficult. So right at the time of Vishaya Dhyana, if we stop, that Vishaya, the moment it enters our mind, we redirect it. We channelize all our energies away from it, then Vishaya Dhyana will not happen. That is why here he says, Raga dvesha vidasyacha. Raga and dvesha, likes and dislikes, we have to give up. We have to go beyond likes and dislikes by not getting attached. Because raga and dvesha are two sides of the same coin. Raga is attachment, dvesha is hatred. Hatred is nothing but negative attachment, essentially. So, as when we overcome that, then automatically that dhyana, Vishaya dhyana, we stop that Vishaya dhyana happening. And when we stop Vishaya dhyana happening, then we stop the downfall. Only when we stop the downfall happening, then we can think of how to bring the mind to the buddhi to the level of the state of being buddhi yukta. So that is why from 51st shloka onwards, Krishna gives us a summary of how to lead our lives, in such a way that we will reach a state of Siddhi, that Purnatva. And when that state of Purnatva is for experiencing our own nature. And only when we start experiencing our nature and knowing our nature, that becomes a prerequisite for us to move to the next stage. Because that it is in that awareness that we start to understand that to take the world out of the equation for our inner purpose, we need to bring something else, because that cannot remain a vacuum. There cannot be a vacuum, because if we leave a vacuum, the world will come filling it in. The only way to take the world out is not to keep a vacuum. We have to fill it. And how can we fill it? We don't need to fill it. We have to invite him. When Krishna starts filling in, then the world will start going out, and it is in that we start. Then one thing becomes very clear to us. While we are doing 100 activities a day, it is bhakti to Krishna is not another to-do list. Bhakti to Krishna becomes the best way to do everything else. Now, this is where Krishna is leading us to. Because right now we all think, yes, I have my day, I have so many things to do. And yes, I also have to pray to Krishna, bhakti to Krishna, one to-do list. We have a to-do list. Some of us may have a to-do list. It's good to have. If you have a to-do list, definitely bhakti to Krishna can be a to-do list. But we will realize that bhakti to Krishna is not a to-do. It is the only way to do. The only way to do action successfully is when we infuse every action, howsoever trivial, howsoever mundane it can be, doesn't matter. Because every action is a mundane action. Just because we are signing $1 million deal does not make it profound, or if you are brushing your teeth does not make it trivial. Both are equally trivial in the larger scheme of things. How do we infuse Krishna Bhakti in every action that we do is what ultimately matters, and Krishna is building a platform here to lead us there. 51, 52, 53 will take us there, and the more we start recognizing the importance of self-awareness, knowing more and more about us, we also will realize that in the process of knowing us, we will also end up knowing him. Now, this is where he is leading. First 6 chapters, Atma Sakshatkara, leading to Paramatma Sakshatkara. First 50 shlokas of 18th chapter, leading to Atma Sakshatkara. Now we are taking that leap to Paramatma Sakshatkara, and the shlokas in between are the steps that Krishna is putting together for us, so that we don't need to take a leap, we can crawl. He's so very compassionate. He doesn't want us to even take the effort of leaping. He's building a nice bridge for us so that we can safely crawl in a secure fashion and start the journey of Paramatma Sakshatkara in the last segment of the 18. Few more weeks to go for that. But until then, we will continue to reflect on how we can lead our lives doing activities, being engaged with the world, rooted in self-awareness and knowing the purpose of why we are doing what we are doing, Until next session. Sarvam Sri Krishna Arpanamastu.